Hello everybody and welcome to our My Decorative Quilter 2 Block of the Month program. This is block 4, our applique block, and it was created for you by Rita Gazard and presented by myself, Mark Garretts. I'm a National Floriani educator. As I always like to do before we get started, I like to show you a picture of what the finished block is going to look like, so you have some idea of where we're headed as we go through the software instructions as well as the construction of the project itself. So this is what the block looks like. So let's go ahead and get started with our software portion of the project. Okay, this is the software portion of block 4, our applique project, and we are going to begin by getting our screen set up, our workspace set up, so we're all together on this. Now, if you don't have a blank white screen like this with your grid lines, then you want to come up here to the new page icon and click that, and then your screen should look something like this. We're going to first come up to our top ruler bar. We're going to hover over the ruler bar and right click, and a little pop-up will show up. Make sure that you're in metric mode, so if you're in inches, click metric. You also want to click show grid so we can see the grid, as well as snap to grid. Make sure all those three things are checked. We want to come now to our grid settings and click that. A window will show up showing us our grid spacing. We want to change our grid spacing right here to 25 millimeters. You can see mine's at 6.35, which was actually something in inches. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to change the top one to 25. I'm going to change the next one to 25. And before I do anything else, I want to come over here and change my grid major spacing to 6 for both of these. So 6 and 6. And what that's going to do is for every 25 millimeters, every 6 of them, it's going to create a major grid line. So that means they're going to be 150 millimeters across. Okay, and that's going to be our hoop size, believe it or not. And so we're going to go ahead and click OK. And now you can see that our grid looks much bigger. In order to be able to see the whole hoop on the screen, we're going to have to zoom out. So to do that, we're going to come up here to our zoom icon right here, and we are going to click the down arrow, and we're going to choose 50%. And that's going to give us enough space to where we can see 150 millimeters. And that would be one of these grid lines right here. So it doesn't matter which one we choose. So we can come right up here to this one right here, and we're just going to draw a box around all of this. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use our rectangle tool. So that's right here in our artwork predefined shapes. If you don't see the rectangle, click the down arrow right here. Come over here and select the rectangle. When you do that and you move back into the window here, you will see that your cursor changes into a crosshair with a little box by it to tell us that we're going to draw a rectangle now. And we're going to draw a rectangle by clicking right here and dragging down to the left and letting off the mouse, and that's going to make a 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter rectangle, and it's going to snap to these grid point intersections here, so you don't have to be totally precise. You can see here I'm actually going to start quite a bit off it. I'm going to left click, and as I drag you can see that it automatically is snapping to those grid point intersections. And now I'm going to let off the mouse, and now I've got 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter rectangle selected. Now we didn't create this in the center of the screen, so we're going to center that up right now. And we're going to do that by clicking on this center on the screen icon right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that icon, and it's going to put it right in the center for us. And the next thing we're going to do is we are going to change this into a run stitch going all the way around. So we want to have this into a run stitch. We're going to do this with our one-click conversion icons right down here in the bottom. So I'm down here on this run, and I'm going to go ahead and click that. And then what I'm going to do is come over here to my properties box, and this is actually going to be one of our basting stitches. So we're going to make our stitch length a lot bigger, so it's a basting stitch length. So I'm going to click and backspace over the 3. I'm going to change it into a 5 and click apply. And remember that nothing happens over here or over here in the design until you click apply. And that's going to create a basting stitch for us out of the thread. It's actually going to convert this artwork into a basting stitch, and it's going to leave this artwork alone, so it's actually going to copy it. So now we want to zoom back in, and the easy way to do that is to come over to our magnifying glass tool and double click it, and that's going to do an automatic zoom to fit to put everything on the screen for us so we can work with it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to pick a shape to create our applique from, and we're going to come over here to our custom shapes, which is our built-in shapes, and I'm going to click that icon. It's going to open up a selection of built-in shapes. I'm going to scroll down until I find Heart 003. So I'm going to scroll down here to the H's, and here is Heart 003. So I'm actually going to select that, and that's going to come into the design. And what we want to do now is we want to resize this. So this should automatically be selected. We're going to come over here to our properties box, and we are going to transform that. So we're going to click the transform tab here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go up to 150%. So check maintain aspect ratio so that they go together, these height and the width, and we're going to come here and we're going to backspace over the 100, and I'm going to type in 150, and you can see because I have maintain aspect ratio checked that I get both changing together, and I'm going to come in here and click apply. Now what you want to do is repeat this step twice, and so we have 3 heart shapes. So what we're going to do now is we are going to repeat step 1 to create another heart, but this time we're not going to change the size. So we're going to come back up here to our custom shapes. We're going to find that heart one more time. So we're going to scroll down to Heart 03, select it, and that time we are going to leave this size alone because that's going to be our inner heart. And we're actually going to repeat that one more time. We're going to select our heart for a 3rd time, and I'm just scrolling. Oops, I went past it. Excuse me. Why am I not seeing it? There it is, Heart 03. And this time we're going to make this one smaller. So we're going to come back to our transform, and we're going to make this one 50% of the original size. So I'm going to click 50, and that's going to create these hearts for us. Now these hearts are perfectly aligned in their visual centers. However, if they don't look quite right to you, if you want to move them around, you can simply click on them and move them around to the centers that you prefer, because it's not exactly a symmetrical shape, so sometimes your eye thinks it's not particularly centered. So for example, we might want to move this one over a little bit to get rid of this little offset here, but it's lined up here. So to my eye, I think this looks okay. So I'm going to leave it alone, but you can feel free to change it around if you want. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create our applique, and what we're going to do is come here to the very first artwork of the heart in our sequence view and select it. This is selecting the bigger outer heart. We're going to change that into an applique. We're going to do that very simply by coming down here to our one-click icons, and we're going to click applique, and that is going to change that into an applique for us. And you can see over here we've created that applique. Now in the properties for the applique, we don't want a satin stitch here. We actually want to use a motif stitch. So we're going to come to the properties under applique type here, click the down arrow, come back and click motif, and we're going to actually select motif number 234 for this particular design. You, however, can choose any motif that you like, but we're going to use 234. So we're going to do that and click apply, and now you can see we've got a nice motif stitch there instead of a satin stitch. In the next thing we're going to do, we're going to create the same motif for the second two. Now these two, or this outer heart here, this was an actual applique. So this actually automatically created a tack down and a placement line for us in addition to that motif stitch. These inner hearts, they're not actually appliques, they're just more like accents that are going in the center of the applique. So we're not going to convert these to applique. Instead, we're going to select both of them. So it's going to be our second and our third artworks. And I'm going to click the first one, hold down the Control key. You can't see me doing that, but I'm holding down Control, and I'm going to click the second one. Now we've got both of our remaining heart artwork shapes selected, and I am going to convert those into a motif stitch. And I'm going to do that with a single click down here by coming down to our motif in our one-click icons, and I'm going to click that, and now we've got two motif stitches there. We've got them still both selected. I'm going to match the motif pattern by changing them to 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to come down and select 2, 3, 4 and click apply, and now we've got matching stitches for all of our sections there. So now what we need to do is we need to change some of the colors. So what we're going to do is we are going to scroll down to the bottom of our sequence view. We are going to click on the last heart motif stitch here, and we're going to change the color of it to any other color that's not already in the design. So I'm just going to select this pink here, and that is probably not a color that you want to stitch out, but it really doesn't matter because you're in control of the threads. Now if you want to take the time to choose a color that goes with your fabric, you can. That's going to create our color change here. So now all three of our hearts are going to be different color stops. The next thing we need to do is we need to create our quilting stitches. To do that, we're going to go back up to our very first heart artwork, which is up here, and we're going to select that, and we're actually going to create a larger outline around it so it's outside of our stitching. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to come up here to our Create Outlines tool and select it, and we are going to leave our ripple set to 1. Now if your ripples are set to something else, you want to set it to 1, but we're going to change our spacing to 2. So if your spacing is somewhere else, you want to do that. You want to make sure that Cascade is checked, and you want to make sure that these two items here are unchecked, and click OK. And that is going to create an artwork outline just around the edge of our stitching there. And we're going to collapse all the items in our sequence view so that we can see them all. So I'm going to right click anywhere on the sequence view and select Collapse All, and I'm going to reselect my last item. I'm going to hold down the Control key and select the very first item. So now I've got the outline of our block selected and the outline of our applique selected. And since I've got two outlines selected, you can see now that my Combine tool has lit up. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click that Combine tool. And what that's going to do is, you can't really see it very well here, or you can't see it at all actually, but what that's done is it's turned this artwork shape from a simple rectangle, combined it with our heart outline, and now you can see here in the sequence view, this little box shows us that we have a combined artwork. What you really can't tell is that the actual space is around the heart here, so it's around this outline, but there's a hole here in the middle. Now we're going to use that to our advantage so we don't quilt through the middle of the applique. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fill this outside area with a shape echo, and with this first artwork selected, we're going to come down here to our shape echo icon, and we're going to click that, and we are going to find the pattern called flower, and we're going to click that, and that will bring in this flower icon. Now this is pretty dense, so we're going to increase our density from 8, which is the default, over to 25. So I'm going to come over to my properties box here, and I'm going to backspace over the 8, and I'm going to click 25 or press 25 on the keyboard, and I'm going to click apply, and that's going to create a more pleasing look for our quilting stitches. The only thing we need to do now is we need to save this file. So we're going to come up here to our save icon and click that, and it's automatically going to come up and be in the WAF format. Now I'm putting it in the July 2015 project folder, which hopefully has already been created on your system when you downloaded the My Decorative Quilter project for this month. It was the July 2015 project. And so you can see that we've already got the applique block in here, and I could save it right over the top. But if I wanted to actually give it a new name, so I leave the default block, the one that we give you, intact, I could come in here and I could type in a new name. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to type in my applique block, and I'm going to click save, and that will save that as a new file. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to save this in a machine format so it will actually stitch out on your machine, because machines don't stitch the WAF format. To do that, we come up here to our file menu and we click save as, and this time we want to choose from the drop down our machine format. So for example, if you have Baby Lock or Brother machine, you might choose PES version 9, which I'm going to do, and click save, and that will put a machine stitch file in that same folder. And then all we need to do is transfer that to a jump drive, put it on our machine, or however it is that you get the designs into your machine. So I'm going to go through a little optional procedure here now, because what we just created is a traditional applique block, and what we're going to do now is convert this design so that it uses our applique stitch material. Now that's actually very, very simple to do. From this point, all we need to do is find our applique, which is actually right here. It's this one that's in Navajo orange. So it's our biggest heart. It's our applique block. And right now you can see that it's still an applique. To convert this into an applique stitch, very, very simple. All we need to do is come down here to our applique stitch conversion icon, simply click that once, and now we have an applique stitch. Now with applique stitch we need the satin stitch here, so it's going to create a satin stitch border, and you can see it's also added another set of stitches here, and that's our what we call a trapping stitch. That stitch is there to hold the applique stitch fabric in place, because this satin stitch is going to cut both sides of the fabric, allowing us to easily tear the applique stitch fabric away. But if we didn't add this extra trapping stitch, it would actually tear away from the inside eventually. So that trapping stitch needs to be there, but the good news is My Decorative Quilter 2 has automatically added it for us. And if you want, you can change your satin stitch parameters here, but it has to be that satin stitch. So that completes our software section. Obviously you'd want to save this file, but that completes our software section for the applique block, or the applique stitch block, and we're going to move on now to the construction. So before we get into the details of the project construction, let's just do a little bit of an overview. This is the fourth of 6 blocks, and there's going to be 1 block every month. Each one of these blocks is going to get stitched out 4 times, and at the end of the 6 months you'll be left with 24 blocks, and they're all going to be joined together to create a 40-inch by 25-inch wall hanging. Now we're going to start out with a materials list, but what follows is just the materials that are going to be required for this particular block. If you want to see the complete list of materials for all the blocks, then you want to go back and look at the list that's in the Block 1 project. So the materials you're going to require for this particular block set is you're going to need some Floriani Quilted Soft Bamboo Cotton Blend batting, some Floriani Nylon No-Show Mesh, some embroidery and bobbin thread, and you want to choose colors that'll work well with your fabric choices, some R&K Embroidery Perfection Tape, Floriani Squeeze and Snip or similar scissors, and you'll need a minimum 6-inch by 6-inch or 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter hoop size. The fabric details for this block are that you're going to need 4 7-inch squares of base fabric for the top of our quilt block. You're going to need 4 4.5-inch squares of fabric for the applique. You could optionally substitute 4.5-inch squares of the applique stitch material, and you'll need 4 7-inch squares of fabric for the backing, and the quantities we're listing here will be enough to make all 4 blocks. Some important things to note before we get started. Some of the color changes in the design are designed to make the machine stop in between steps, and you have the option of leaving in the same thread or change it as desired. But it's important to note that if you have a multi-needle machine, those machines just want to go on to the next color without stopping, and we need the machine to stop so we can do things in the hoop in between stitching. So you're going to have to use those machine controls to insert reserve stop commands to make the machine stop between the colors. So let's go ahead and start embroidering. You want to load the applique block design into your machine, hoop up a piece of Floriani nylon no-show mesh stabilizer, get it good and tight. You want to center a 7-inch square piece of batting in the hoop, and then over the top of that you want to put your 7-inch base fabric over the batting and secure both of them nice and tight with embroidery perfection tape. Next, you want to attach the hoop to your machine, stitch out the first color choice to base the fabric and the batting to the stabilizer. You want to change the top thread to a color that goes well with your fabric choices, and you want to stitch out the next color, which will stitch the placement line. Next, you want to place the applique or applique stitch fabric covering the placement lines and secure the edges with embroidery perfection tape. Next, you want to stitch out the third color choice to tack the applique fabric in place, and you can optionally use your machine controls to back up and stitch this stitch again. Rita likes to do that, but it's not necessary at all if you're using the applique stitch fabric. When that's done, you want to remove the hoop from the machine and trim close to the tack down stitches using a squeeze and snips or similar tool. If you're using applique stitch fabric, though, you don't want to trim. And if you're using applique stitch fabric, you want to stitch out the next color, which is the trapping stitch, and you want to make sure that this thread color matches the applique stitch fabric. You want to go ahead and stitch out the next color, and this will be the motif stitch that outlines the applique. If it's applique stitch, it's going to be a satin stitch. Then you want to change the thread color for the middle heart and stitch it. Change the thread color one more time for the inner heart and stitch it. Next, you want to remove the hoop from the machine, and if you're using applique stitch fabric, now would be the time when you want to gently tear away the outside of the applique stitch fabric. You want to flip the hoop upside down and secure the backing fabric right side up to the underside of the hoop using embroidery perfection tape, and then go ahead and reattach the hoop to the machine. Now you want to go ahead and change the top thread and optionally the bobbin thread to a color that goes with your fabric, because these are going to become our quilting stitches. And then you want to stitch out that last color, which will be our quilting stitches, to quilt the layers together. Now all that's left to do is remove the hoop from machine and unhoop the block from the hoop. And you want to trim the block 1/4 inch from the basting stitch on all 4 sides, and using a transparent quilting ruler and a rotary cutter is the easiest way to do this. That'll leave you a block that's slightly less than 6.5 inches, and you want to repeat that 3 more times to make a total of 4 blocks. And you might want to mix it up a bit and use applique stitch for 2 and fabric for 2, or applique stitch for all of them, whatever you want to do. So we want to thank everybody for watching and for attending. We hope that you'll use this video along with the print PDF instructions to recreate this project at home. Come on back next month for the next block in the series, and don't forget to post your blocks on the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page. At the end of this series of 6 blocks, we're going to be then creating a quilt out of all 6 blocks, as we told you earlier. We'll be awarding prizes for the best set of blocks and the best finished quilt that's been posted to the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page. So we hope you'll participate, and we'll see you next month.